recently, a China rocket blasted off from a launch center with a pair of navigation satellites bound for orbit around Earth. As the rocket climbed higher and higher, the 4 strap-on boosters that launched with it began to fall away. This is supposed to happen. The boosters provide extra lift in the minutes after launch, and when they burn through their fuel, they separate and fall back down to Earth, normally in the sea. The satellites made it safely into orbit, but back on the ground, there were flames. One of those 4 discarded boosters had landed near a town and exploded. Video captured by onlookers and shared on social media shows the booster falling from the sky and striking the ground behind buildings. Screams are heard as flames erupt when it makes contact. Other footage shows bystanders approaching the flaming wreckage in a grassy area. Flames billow out from one end of the booster and the ground is littered with chunks of debris. The incident is actually not uncommon in China. 3 of the country's 4 launch facilities are located deep inland, hundreds of miles away from open water. For China to send satellites and other payloads into space from these spots, rockets must fly over land. China designates some areas around their launch facilities as zones for discarded debris, like boosters. Most of these zones are rural regions. There were no reports of injuries. The biggest test for the Long March program will come in late 2018 to launch Chang'e 4, a combination of a lander and rover, to the far side of the moon. The mission, if successful, would be a first for humankind. This week, Boeing revealed the first design details of a demonstrator aircraft that would go faster than Mach 5. Boeing hopes to build the hypersonic concept around a combined cycle engine that incorporates elements of a turbine and a dual ramjet. Boeing's model design is similar to one Lockheed Martin is working on, and we showed off on the show a few months ago. The aerospace industry right now is racing to produce a hypersonic strike and reconnaissance aircraft to replace the famed SR-71 Blackbird. If the concept is selected for full-scale development, Boeing envisions a 2-step process, beginning with flight tests of an F-16-sized single-engine proof-of-concept precursor vehicle, leading to a twin-engine full-scale operational vehicle with about the same dimensions as the 107-foot-long SR-71. The X-51 broke the record for sustained air-breathing hypersonic flight when it flew at Mach 5.1 for 3.5 minutes before running out of fuel and crashing into the Pacific Ocean on May 1, 2013. The big difference is that the X-51 was a small test vehicle dropped by a B-52. It used a rocket booster to achieve Mach 4.8, then jettisoned the booster and used a scramjet to top Mach 5. A hypersonic replacement for the SR-71 would need to take off under its own power, accelerate through Mach 1 up to Mach 5, and then slow back down and land. A much more difficult challenge. It is difficult to put a timeline on the research of the potential flight tests, though Lockheed reportedly hopes to fly a single-engine scaled demonstrator known as the Flight Research Vehicle, or FRV, in the 2020s sometime. One has to imagine that Boeing wants to match Lockheed Martin's development schedule, if not surpass it. And finally, happening in this week's What The?, a trio of stories that are all a little mind-boggling. If you prefer your J-pop bands to be a little bit more blockchainy, well, we've got some great news for you. A new J-pop girl group from Japan is capitalizing on the recent hype surrounding Bitcoin and singing about cryptocurrencies. The group's name translates into Virtual Currency Girls. Each one of the 8 members represents a different cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and Cardano. The women are outfitted in maid dresses and lucha libre-style masks that denote the currency that they represent. We want to promote the idea through entertainment that virtual currencies are not just a tool for speculation, but are a wonderful technology that will shape the future, said the group's 18-year-old leader in a press statement. Japan passed laws last April that recognize Bitcoin as a legal tender, and cryptocurrency trade in the country accounts for around half of global trade volume. The band itself was started by entertainment company Cinderella Academy to educate the public about cryptocurrencies. Cinderella Academy also manages other J-pop bands. The debut single is called The Moon and Virtual Currencies and Me, and is a blistering electro-pop song that warns listeners to be aware of fraud and to maintain their security online. The group takes payment for concerts, tickets, merchandise, and other products through, what else? Cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin and Ethereum. 25-year-old Tyler Barris was charged in Kansas for involuntary manslaughter and 2 other counts in the wake of a swatting call that led police to kill an unarmed 28-year-old at his home. The maximum sentence varies, but if found guilty, Barris could face a hefty fine and years in prison. Police say that Barris had called police to report a hostage situation, telling officers on the 28th of December that he had his family at gunpoint and had doused the house with petrol. He then gave them an address for 28-year-old Andrew Finch, who was shot and killed by an officer when he answered the door. That officer is now on paid administrative leave. Barris reportedly made the call after an argument between 2 Call of Duty players led to one of them giving the other an address. That player then reportedly gave the address to Barris, who was well known in the community for swatting, making false police reports in order to get officers to show up at an adversary's house. The address turned out to be unrelated to anyone involved with the dispute, however, and instead led police to Finch. Barris was also charged with giving false alarm and interference with law enforcement. His bond is set at $500,000. As Rolling Stone points out, Barris is also being charged for a swatting incident in Calgary, Canada, in late December. Nobody was hurt in that case. Who says pop punk's dead? A former bassist of the 90s group The Ataris could face 30 years in prison after being charged with wire and mail fraud from a $27 million telemarketing scheme. Michael Davenport and his partner Cynthia Rawlingson were arrested for an array of scam-related charges recently. Conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, 5 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of mail fraud, according to the Santa Barbara Independent. Over a 7-year period, a Santa Barbara-based telemarketing business the pair ran allegedly scammed people out of $27 million by convincing them to pay a small fee in return for access to exclusive real estate listings. But after customers paid the $199 fee, they didn't end up finding their dream home. Allegedly, some of the addresses didn't even exist. Over their 7 years in operation, American Standard victimized over 100,000 people and defrauded these individuals out of more than $27 million. If convicted, Davenport and Rawlingson face up to 30 years in prison each. Thank you for watching your weekly tech update. If you have a story you think that I should feature on the program, well, just shoot me an email, djraymcneil@gmail.com. And of course, find us on Facebook too at Your Weekly Tech Update. Till next time, I'm Ray McNeil. Good night, world.